Welcome to the Intuitive Therapist Podcast with Janis Cohen, therapist, clairvoyant, empath, and medium. Listen in as she takes a no-nonsense deep dive into real human struggles and how to resolve them. Janis will share channeled information from her spirit guide team, as well as the angels and archangels, to help you master your emotional, physical, financial, and spiritual destiny. And now, Janis Cohen.
Hey y'all, this is Janis Cohen, the Intuitive Therapist, here on the Intuitive Therapist Podcast. Today we are diving into a concept that I think will help most of you today who struggle to feel emotionally free. And I'm going to explain what I mean by emotionally free in just a moment. But first, I think it makes sense to acknowledge that most humans struggle to experience emotional freedom from everyday life. But after today's episode, my hope is that you're going to use some of these tips to help you release what no longer serves you to carry around emotionally, right? So to me, emotional freedom means that you learn from your emotions versus being controlled by them. It's a big one. Most of us are just used to feeling versus questioning. And I talk a lot about questioning your emotions in the podcast that I've created, and also using your emotions. Right? We're not here just to feel. We're here to understand the experience of the feeling. So why do so many people struggle to have that sense of agency over their emotions and instead become controlled by them? And why is it that when most people want to feel emotionally free, they oftentimes can't? Or they might only feel a sense of freedom for just a moment and then go back to feeling heavy and burdened. So today, I want to share the reason why all of this happens and offer some unique insight into how you can connect with that sense of freedom anytime you want and make it last. And most importantly, stop being controlled by your emotions. Now, there's a profound and transformative concept from Buddhist teaching that talks about going beyond the self. This isn't just philosophy, it's a practical guide to breaking free from emotional pain and discovering a deeper sense of peace. So, I want to explore how transcending the illusion of the self can open the door to liberation, and this is where most people get stuck, okay? In the illusion of self. Let's start with the basics. In Buddhist philosophy, the self as we perceive it is an illusion. What feels solid and permanent to us actually isn't the case. So when we look at it in human form, that's kind of how we experience it. The self, like our human body. The body, it's actually a construct made up of ever-changing elements. Our thoughts, our emotions, our body itself, memories and beliefs, right? So the illusion of who we are, this idea that is an actual illusion, is based on how you view and you define yourself as you are changing into who you are from moment to moment and year to year, okay? Buddhists have this idea called anatta, or non-self. And this is one of Buddhism's 3 marks of existence: anatta, non-self, alongside impermanence and suffering. Okay? 3 marks of existence. Think about this. Have you ever felt like a completely different person than you were 5 or 10 years ago? I know I have. And that's because you are. The you of today is not the you of yesterday. Recognizing that this impermanence is the first step in loosening the grip of the ego. That's why the self is an illusion. Because even a moment ago, you're not the same person as you are right now in this moment. So that's the impermanence piece. That's the illusory piece of all of this. And so, as I've mentioned before, who you are is constantly changing. And you have an infinite number of versions of you throughout your lifetime. And I'm referencing both actual shifts in who you are, as well as quantum theory, that all versions of you already exist in the quantum field. Every possibility already exists in the quantum. Now, I want to talk about an interconnectedness, another cornerstone of this concept. Buddhism teaches that everything exists in relationship to everything else. This is called dependent origination. So you're not an island. You're a thread in the vast web of life. Every experience, every relationship, and every thought arises because of countless conditions that came before it. So the illusion that you happen to be a self and that you actually happen to be separate from everything, it's not true, because who you are came from something before you. You didn't just appear like that, right? Maybe Adam and Eve did, but you didn't. I didn't, right? So dependent origination simply means that no beings or phenomena exists independently of other beings and other phenomenon. Okay? And because that is the case, there can never be an I or me. It's always us. It's always we. So why does this matter? Why am I sharing all of this stuff with you, this beautiful wisdom with you? Because understanding interconnectedness helps dissolve the illusion of separation, meaning when we're suffering, we feel separate from. We believe that the only person that matters, that is existing, is us, me. When I'm suffering, when you're suffering, the only focus is on you. That's why it's an illusion, because everything is connected. But this is something that, you're not alone in your struggles or joys. But we forget this often, right? Every single one of us has had at least one experience of feeling totally alone, if not many. Feeling like there's nobody to turn to, there's nobody to depend on, there's nobody who cares. That what we're going through, we are going through in a vacuum. I've been there many times. But the reality is that while we may feel this way, it's our sense of disconnectedness that causes our sense of aloneness. When we're practicing disconnection, we are practicing aloneness. And given that, when we believe we are separate from anybody or anything else, we lean into feeling sad and anxious and helpless. So when you find a way to move away from yourself, the illusion of self, that you are in and of yourself separate from everything, the idea of you being separate from everything else, then you realize how actually connected you are to all things. Think about it. When your pets feel your energy, they come up to you. When they feel you sad, the very first thing they do is come and love on you. There's no way that you could be separate from that. It's impossible. And one sure way to test this theory is when you feel alone and separate from everybody else and everything else, I want you to go do something kind for somebody else. Get out of you. Open a door for somebody. Call somebody. Bake a cake for somebody. Go find a total stranger and bring them some food, or give them a blanket if they're homeless and it's cold. Get out of you. Get out of your head and into service. And I promise you, you're not going to feel disconnected after that. You're actually going to feel good. You're going to feel valuable, useful. And in turn, this might help you be able to get out of the self-indulgent behavior of only focusing on you by shifting into behaviors that allow you to actually connect with others when you're suffering from feeling alone. It's something that any depressed person will benefit from, because depression is rooted in over-focus on self, stuck with yourself. So when you get out of that, when you are of service to others, when you're feeling sad, you can't feel both. You can't feel good about being of service and sad at the same time. Doing a mitzvah, as we Jews call it, of doing a good deed and feel sad at the same time. Impossible. So maybe it's going to get a cup of coffee and just being around other people. Maybe it's striking up a conversation with somebody randomly to connect. Maybe it's, reaching out to somebody who's going through a tough time as well and being there for them, getting out of you, even though you yourself perceive yourself as hurting or suffering. Maybe it's writing down in your journal examples of how you've randomly received support and guidance from both from others and from your inner guidance, your guides, the universe. So realizing this can foster deep compassion for yourself and others, and it's what we're talking about here. It's the interconnectedness. When you're no longer clinging to the idea of being separate, isolated self, it's easier to connect authentically and love freely. Now, let's talk about ego transcendence. This is a big one too. So the ego, or the sense of I and mine, it's often the source of our emotional suffering. So I was talking about before. It tells us stories like, I'm not good enough. Nobody loves me. I'm all alone. I'll never make it. I'll be happy when I get that promotion, or I can't forgive them because they hurt me. I'll never be successful. These stories keep us trapped in cycles of attachment and aversion, wanting things to be different than what they are, but feeling powerless to make that happen. And in simple terms, transcending the ego is really, truly about not listening to the bullshit that it tells you. And it is bullshit. The ego, really the only time you need to listen to the ego is when you're in actually explicit danger. That's it. Otherwise, you need to tell the ego to go F off. I'm telling you, it's the truth. I know that's not a Buddhist way of saying it, but it's my way, right? And I live my walk. I walk my talk, right? So when the ego tries to keep you down and out, it tries to make you believe that no one cares, that you don't matter, that you aren't good enough or qualified enough, or that you need to hold on to anger to protect yourself and you can't forgive somebody, that you need to wait until you have the thing you want, until you can feel that feeling of happiness from it. All lies, all bullshit, BS, not true. When you move beyond your ego, you are simply noticing the negative thoughts and beliefs and consciously choosing what you're going to believe. You're saying, ego, thank you, but no thank you. And ideally, this would include beliefs that allow you to feel good about who you are and the life that you lead, right? Transcending the ego, it doesn't mean erasing your individuality. It means recognizing that your worth isn't tied to the fleeting or external achievements that you as a human being experience. When you release the ego's grip, you make space for compassion, resilience, and equanimity. Imagine the freedom of not taking every criticism personally or not listening to the negative thoughts in your mind anymore and not needing external validation to feel whole. Now, we come into this world whole. We can choose to continue to feel whole based on what we believe, how we think, and the actions that we choose if they're in alignment with what we really value and if we know who we are, right? So how do we put all this into practice? So I'm going to give you a few tools, okay? And you can start using these today. The first is mindfulness meditation. Now, all that means is just you're kind of like, imagine that you're watching yourself watch your thoughts. It's like taking some steps back, being aware of your thoughts, just noticing them, right? Unattached, noticing, oh my God, I thought this thought again. Say just, there's that frustration or there's that sadness, and go, interesting that showed up. You could explore it or you could let it go. Okay? Let it pass like a cloud in the sky. Second is loving kindness practice. Many of y'all are going to poo-poo this. I don't care. You need to hear this because it's huge when it comes to feeling alone or not feeling alone. Cultivating compassion by silently wishing yourself and others well. Start with phrases like, may I be happy. May I be free from suffering. because I choose to know and believe that I am not here to suffer, that I am connected, that I can change my life and extend those wishes to others. Now, you can do mirror work. This is huge, huge, huge. Where you go in front of a mirror, you stand in front of a mirror, or you hold a mirror in front, and you're looking in your eyes, and you're saying to yourself, self, you know what? You're going to be good. You're fine. You can deal with this. You may not know what's ahead, but you've experienced many times where you haven't known what's ahead. And I love you. You matter to me. You're a priority to me. I'm going to honor you because you're number one in my book. Third, self-inquiry. So when you feel emotional pain, this was huge. When I was channeling this information, this came through and I was like, oh my gosh, brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. I'm not saying I'm brilliant. I'm saying the information is brilliant. When you feel emotional pain, I want you to ask yourself, what am I believing right now that is causing me to feel as though I'm suffering? It's a limiting belief. It's a feeling of helplessness. I can't because, I don't know how to because, I won't ever because, right? So it's a huge question that's going to get you out of your self-pity and suffering. And this helps you separate your thoughts from your chosen emotions. So here's the beautiful takeaway. When we go beyond the illusion of self, we free ourselves from so much unnecessary suffering. But it takes practice and it's hard. The trick is to become so aware of your thoughts and beliefs that you can't help but autocorrect them when the negative ones show up. We stop clinging to things that aren't permanent, right? We stop defining ourselves by our past mistakes and our future anxieties when we do this. And instead, we live in the present moment. Challenge also of being human. Grounded in the truth of who we are, but you have to know who you are in order to ground yourself in that truth. We are fluid, interconnected, and inherently whole. We're always searching to come back to that sense of wholeness. And this journey isn't about denying your humanity. It's about embracing it fully with all its imperfections and beauty. And it's about waking up to the reality that you aren't just a separate self trying to survive. You are a part of something much greater, desiring to thrive. Well, I hope this episode was helpful. If you feel like somebody you know needs to hear this, please share it. Please do. Please like and subscribe. Please rate and review the podcast. I love seeing all the comments. And remember, true freedom, it begins when you stop clinging to the illusion of the self and start living in alignment with your authentic truth. And if you don't know your authentic truth and who you are, first step. Okay? So until next week, I wish you a blessed day, a wonderful week, and as always, live intuitively.
Thanks for listening to The Intuitive Therapist. If you like what you heard, the best compliment you can give us is to share this podcast with a friend. And be sure to give us some stars and a favorable review at Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen in.